So these are the edible cookies, right? Some store-bought. You can trust these because the Food Administration has
FDA.
Yeah, FDA. These are the inedible cookies because they're squares, so you know something's wrong with them.
Damn, it's all geometry.
So now you must choose the cookie you wish to ingest by seriously considering all the thoughts and flavors that a cookie might bring.
And the calories.
As you see, these are the options.
Awesome.
This is the final
There
choice.
it is.
As you can see here, we have our lovely model opening the bag and acquiring said cookie which she wished to ingest. She now has the subject in hand, and our next step will be how to actually eat said cookie. Okay, now we are actually going to ingest said cookie. Now this requires a lot of skill, and it might not go right the first time. We'll give you a few examples of what might go wrong, but right now this is the proper way to do it. So you have the cookie in hand, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to open your mouth, and you're going to want to place part of the cookie in your mouth. Not all of it, because it's usually hard to chew. Now you're going to bite down with enough force to break the cookie and then eat it. Here, she's very experienced, but now she knows to chew. And so she will chew the cookie thoroughly before swallowing, because otherwise things can get caught in the throat, and that's bad. So once she feels that she has thoroughly chewed the cookie, which may take some time, but don't worry, if it takes you a while, that's fine. Everyone chews at their own pace. Once you are done with the chewing process, you proceed to swallow, which requires a lot of muscles in the throat. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but it's always better to... I'm not going to make that joke because I don't know if that's appropriate. So, once you swallow, you want to take a breath just to make sure your lungs are full of oxygen before you take your next bite. So now we're going to give you a few examples of what might go wrong. So just in case like you do want to do some troubleshooting, we can give you some ways you're going down the wrong path. So in these scenarios, we're going to be using our non-edible cookies because these would be a waste of cookies. So we want you to make sure you get full experience out of your cookies. So this is why we're teaching you the wrong ways to do it, so you know the right way to do it and you don't waste any of your cookies. But that's why we're using the inedible ones. We will not be ingesting any of these, do not worry. No models were harmed in the process of making this video. So now he's gonna take one of the inedible cookies. And this is one possible way that you could go wrong. Usually it's missing the mouth. That's one of the most common ways that we have people eating cookies wrong. So they just don't really know where their mouth is and are unable to ingest and experience the cookie. In this case, he applied a little bit too much force and not through the teeth to actually bite the cookie, but actually just hitting the cookie on his face. We want to avoid that because it makes a mess and crumbs, and then the poor janitorial staff have to clean up after you filthy self. So here we again have our cookies. This is another wrong way to ingest a cookie. So our model here, Cindy, is going to take a cookie. Now usually when you want to eat a cookie, you yourself want to ingest the cookie. But here she's going to make a critical mistake. Instead of eating the cookie herself, she's going to want to try to share it. Here she's going to want to try to share it with a plant. Now see, this isn't going to work because unlike humans, they don't have a mouth in which they can apply the force to get the cookie. So she's just going to leave the cookie at the pot and just pray that the plant will be able to eat it, which unfortunately it won't, and a cookie will go to waste. And again, we do not want any cookie wastage. So here's another example of the incorrect way to eat a cookie. So we had first already seen the critical mistake of missing the mouth. Then we had the critical mistake of feeding it to another living thing, but not something that could actually ingest the cookie. Now here we have a very critical and a very rude mistake that you can make, which is throwing the cookie out without even ingesting it. So here we have our fearless leader, Rose, and she has an inedible cookie for this experiment. So now what she's gonna do is, instead of actually eating the cookie and bringing it to her own mouth, she's gonna bring it to the mouth of the trash can and throw it away. As you can see here, the poor cookie is wasted, never being able to bring the joy it was meant to bring to the person who was going to eat it. So this is an incorrect way to eat a cookie.
All right, I'm rolling. Good.
So this is going into a little bit of an expertise realm, so don't really want to try this off the start, but after you've eaten a cookie a few times and you feel like you've handled the skills, this is next step, kind of pro play. So here we're back at the step of choosing the cookie, but instead of our first model ingesting the cookie, now we're going to have one model feed another. So here we have Ben and Felicity. Now, Ben will be actually choosing the cookie for Felicity, which is another approach to do it. Sometimes you want the person who's actually ingesting the cookie to choose what they want to eat, but this time Ben just went ahead and did it himself, which is fine. So now Ben is going to feed the cookie to Felicity. Again, since you were feeding it to yourself earlier, you were able to control the speed. But this time, you have to be able to make sure both people involved are approaching it at the same speed. You don't want one to go too fast and one to go too slow, or else things might go horribly wrong. So here, Ben is first going to ask Felicity if he can feed her a cookie. You always want consent first, that's important. Ben is going to ask Felicity for consent to feed her a cookie. Felicity, can I feed you this cookie?
Sure.
So once Ben receives consent, he will raise the cookie to her face to show that the cookie is coming in. Now, Felicity will lean forward and insert the cookie herself into her own mouth and then bite. Usually this is when Felicity would want to raise a hand and grab the rest of the cookie to make sure it doesn't fall when she makes the critical bite and bites off only part of the cookie. Now she's again going with the chewing technique, the good way to do it, and then we'll do the swallowing and again the re-ingesting of the rest of the cookie.